Here we go then. It's time for me to read to you a short extract of my book, Grandpa Was an Astronaut, by me, Jonathan Mears, with illustrations, that's the pictures, done by the amazing Hannah Coulson. Now, normally, if I was going to come to a school or a library, I would start at the very beginning. A very good place to start. If you decide at some later date to pick up a copy of my book, Grandpa Was an Astronaut, from your school library or one of Donegal libraries, I would recommend you start at the beginning of the book. I would always recommend you start at the beginning of a book. But because we don't have a great deal of time today, I've decided to start just a wee bit into the book. So we've already met my central character. My central character is a wee boy called Sherman. Now, Sherman lives in a little white house next to the sea, next to a shingly beach, with his mum and his little dog called Luna. Luna. Perhaps after you've watched this, you might like to find out why I decided to call Sherman's dog Luna, because there's a particular reason I did that. Anyhow, there's all kinds of stuff that Sherman likes to do. He likes to gaze out to sea, looking at the ships sailing by on the distant horizon, looking at the clouds drifting over his house. But there's one thing above everything else that Sherman really, really likes to do, and that is to get into his mum's car, with mum driving, of course, and drive all the way to see his grandpa. Because, as you may have already gathered from the title of this book, the clues in the title, Sherman's grandpa was an astronaut. An astronaut. Did I say astronaut? I just made up a word. I'm an author. I make stuff up. That's my job. So anyhow, when we join Sherman and his mum and his little dog Luna, they have driven all the way down a squiggly road to Grandpa's house, and we join the action at the point where Grandpa opens the door. So here we are with Chapter 3 of Grandpa Was an Astronaut, and the chapter is called Real Moon Rock. Here we go. When Grandpa opened the door and saw Sherman, he said what he always said.
Grandpa to Sherman. Grandpa to Sherman. Come in, please, Sherman.
Sherman laughed like he always did. Sherman loved it when Grandpa said stuff like that. Stuff that he used to say back when he was an astronaut. And when he said it, Grandpa always covered his nose and mouth with his hand so that his voice sounded all funny and muffled, as if he was far, far away, zooming through space.
Are you receiving me, Sherman?
Grandpa said. Look, there we are. There's Sherman, and there's Grandpa opening his door and putting his hand over his nose and his mouth and making his voice sound all funny, just as if he was an astronaut.
Receiving you loud and clear, Grandpa,
said Sherman.
In that case, what are you waiting for?
Said Grandpa. Come on in! When Sherman stepped inside Grandpa's house, he did what he always did and headed straight for the mantelpiece. There were two things there that Sherman liked to look at. See the mantelpiece? Yeah. First of all, there was a photograph. Not just any old photograph. A photograph of Grandpa standing on the moon next to a flag he just stuck in the ground. Of course, you couldn't really tell that it was Grandpa because Grandpa was wearing his special spacesuit and his big round helmet. You couldn't see his face, but Sherman knew that it was Grandpa because Grandpa said it was, and that was good enough for Sherman. The other thing on the mantelpiece that Sherman liked to look at was a small glass case. Can anybody see a small glass case? Let's see. There we are. There's a small glass case just there. Where are we? Lost my place. Yes, in the case was a tiny lump of rock. Not just any old rock, real moon rock. Look, there it is. There's a real moon rock. Dusty and white. Not in the least bit like cheese. That was just a kid's story. Same as all that hey diddle diddle stuff and cows jumping over the moon. Sherman knew none of that was true. What's it like on the moon, Grandpa? Sherman said when Grandpa came and stood beside him. Let's find out, shall we? Said Grandpa. Pardon? Said Sherman. Let's find out, said Grandpa again. But how will we do that? Sherman asked. We'll go there, Grandpa said, with a shrug of his shoulders, as if he'd just suggested they go to the swing park or the swimming pool. Whoa, said Sherman. Really? Really? Grandpa said. How? Sherman asked. We'll build a spaceship, said Grandpa. Cool, said Sherman. And so they